Welcome to Module 2 of the course. In this week's module, we will be revisiting some of the theories and the impact of educational dialogue. In the last module, we discussed the role of the facilitator, and I drew on recent research from members of the TSETA team to talk a little bit about some successes and some challenges in that role. In this module, we're going to discuss what we mean by educational dialogue, and we're going to review the categories of dialogue as well. We're also going to be revisiting some of the theory behind educational dialogue and looking at evidence that dialogue promotes student learning. A lot of this might be areas that you're already familiar with, but we will also begin to consider and discuss ways of sharing this with your colleagues and how that's best done. Your objective this week is really to just consider that. So review the resources and the theory with the lens of how you're going to present it to your colleagues in a really engaging and in an accessible way in order to promote their buy-in to the approach of educational dialogue. And previous facilitators have really noted and emphasized the importance of that initial buy-in in creating a successful facilitation experience. So it's really worth taking the time to do that. And by the way, there are so many fascinating readings and resources out there about educational dialogue. And this week's materials is really just a stepping stone. And so you're going to benefit from collating different readings and resources that are applicable and appropriate for your setting. And so you can take the ones that I've included in the read section below. You can also use this video as well in a workshop with your teachers if you think that that would be helpful. Remember that we're also launching 2 new courses in the new year in early 2022. So those courses will be a little bit more an in-depth exploration of the theory behind educational dialogue, as well as supporting practitioners in conducting a reflective inquiry into their practice. So you can also and should also borrow the readings from those courses as well and the materials from those courses. And you can actually even have your colleagues take them together as a group. You can facilitate their attendance. So what is educational dialogue and what do we mean by it? By dialogue, I refer to something that is more than just talk. In practice, productive dialogue in the classroom, it would involve participants listening to each other. It would also involve participants contributing to the dialogue through sharing their ideas, justifying those contributions, and being explicit about their reasoning. And it would also involve participants engaging with their peers or their teachers' views. They can do this through acknowledging others' views, responding to them, and learning from them. And this helps build knowledge collectively over time through linking the contributions between different speakers. Educational dialogue is also about critically challenging others' ideas to improve the quality of the thinking and exploring and evaluating different perspectives and reasons. There's a lot more that I can say here about educational dialogue, but I've included a few really great starter resources below and also brief video guides. And so I'm not going to replicate any of that content, and I'm going to get straight into a very brief review of some of the theory behind educational dialogue. And this week really isn't meant to overwhelm you with too much theory. We have that upcoming course that will probably do that, and that we're sort of saving, an in-depth exploration of the theory for. But right now, I just felt it was really important to start here, to start with theory when we discuss what dialogue looks like in practice. And it will be equally as important for you to start with a bit of theory when you're facilitating your colleagues. And I'm going to keep this again very brief for the sake of this video, but like I've said before, lots of resources are included below for you to explore yourself in your own time. And also for you to draw on for your colleagues, and you can adapt this depending on your collective familiarity with educational dialogue. And you should really select the ones that best suit your setting too. And I would really recommend choosing different mediums. So you could have a podcast on there. I really like the video guides. They're really brief. They're about 2 minutes in length and short and snappy and very accessible. And then you can include a few, like 2 or 3 maybe readings, bits of evidence. Okay, so getting into the theory. Theoretical perspectives on dialogue draw a lot on sociocultural theory. And this theory highlights the co-construction of new meanings when participants actively engage with one another's ideas. And in the quote that you see here, Neil Mercer talks about a key strength of the theory as explaining how students can learn from dialogue and interacting with others, but also how this contributes to a collective understanding as well. So he says, indeed, one of the distinctive strengths of sociocultural theory is that it explains not only how individuals learn from interaction with others, but also how collective understanding is created from interactions amongst individuals. So learning happens through dialogue, and it is sustained through that larger collective awareness of the potential of value of dialogue for learning. And in terms of translating this into practice, Neil Mercer's quote actually goes on to suggest that this means that the activities which focus on building awareness of how dialogue can be used effectively for problem solving during group work is expected to achieve stronger results than if activities are only targeted to improve the quality of dialogue within the group work. Theorists that you'll often see cited in the literature would be Merleau-Ponty, Habermas, Piaget, Vygotsky, Bakhtin, Karen Barad, Julia Kristeva, Robin Alexander, Neil Mercer, Rupert Wegriff. I might be pronouncing some names incorrectly, but there are so many more as well. So my suggestion would be to try not to read all of them all at once, and this can be overwhelming for your colleagues as well. So you're better off just selecting a few key resources. And actually the post series from Neil Phillipson that I linked below in the read section, it has a really great reference list itself, so that could be a good starting place for you. And once our new MOOC, of course, is launched, I would draw on the reading lists from there too. And you can share with your colleagues. So now let's get into the categories of dialogue. There's a growing evidence base that supports the idea that dialogic teaching is beneficial for students' learning and other personal development outcomes as well. And one way that we can explore this dialogue as both researchers and as practitioners is through categorizing the different types of dialogue. On the table that you see here, I've included a few examples of categories of dialogue, but there are more that can be found in the resources section. So do take a look at that. It's in the T-Setup pack. And the reason why I've put this up here is to give you a better idea of what educational dialogue looks like and how you can present this to your colleagues in hopefully a very practical way. And apologies if this is repetitive. You can just fast forward, but I'm going to review these just together. And so looking at the first two categories, they're quite similar. The first is invite to build on ideas, and that refers to inviting others to elaborate, build on, clarify, comment on, or improve their own or another person's ideas and their contributions. And the second category is specifically just building on one's own or another's ideas that they expressed previously. The third column that you'll see on the right there, it offers guidance on how we can know when the category is happening and keywords to listen out for. Keywords that would signal that students or teachers are inviting others to build on ideas could be a teacher or student asking someone else if they agree, for example. The third category that you'll see here is challenge, which would be questioning, disagreeing with, or challenging an idea. And some keywords that might signal this category is being used include the phrases, I disagree, and I have a different idea. The fourth category is invite reasoning, which is when others are invited to explain, justify, use possibility thinking relating to their own or another's ideas, so on. And keywords that might signal this category is taking place include why, how, and can you explain that further? So take a look at the longer version that's included in the T-Setup pack, and I've linked that in the resources section below, and you'll see all of the other categories too, because that's just a bit of an introduction. And the great part of having these categories is that they also offer us a much easier way to know whether or not educational dialogue is actually taking place in the classroom. And so that table that you saw, that can also be used as a coding scheme for us to track the number of times that we hear that category of dialogue taking place. And this is really useful when you're conducting a reflective inquiry into your practice, or when your colleagues are conducting reflective inquiries, because you can choose a category to focus on and then monitor the number of times that you're hearing it. And then you'll be able to consider really targeted ways of improving that category within the teaching. And so we'll discuss a little bit more about that in week 4 when we're talking about how to support your colleagues in conducting reflective inquiries. And then in week 5, we're going to talk a little bit more about identifying key dialogic features in the classroom. And so that would be the use of this coding scheme as well as other tools. So going back to the impact of educational dialogue, the categories of dialogue that appear to be strongly associated with learning gains are building on ideas, invitation to build on ideas, and challenging others' views respectfully. And the key word there really is respectfully, because challenging without being considerate can be really detrimental to learning. And this points to the importance of something that we call ground rules. And I've included more information about ground rules in the do section, and have some materials for you to share with your colleagues, including another video resource if that's helpful. And more about the evidence of the impact of educational dialogue is actually discussed in another video resource below. And without wanting to replicate any content, I've just included the link for that for you so that you can explore that, and that you can actually just go ahead and share that video directly with your colleagues as well. For this next section though, I thought it might be helpful to review some examples of educational dialogue, which you could potentially use in a workshop with your colleagues to explore together, and to maybe work through together as a sort of introduction to what it looks like in practice. And these examples are from a program called OER for Schools, and I've linked to those in the do section as well. And I'm going to go through these in a way that you could do with your colleagues. And so in this scenario, I would be you, the facilitator. You'll see here a brief example of an interaction between a teacher and a student, Kenneth. I want you to now please pause the video, read through the example, and reflect on strengths and weaknesses that you see in terms of supporting educational dialogue. Play the video again once you're ready. So what did you think about this exchange? It looks like there was no particularly useful feedback that was given, and we can see that Kenneth gives up. And telling students that their answers are wrong probably doesn't help them learn very much. And I would like you to pause the video again and maybe write down alternative responses that you can think of that might encourage rather than stop dialogue and thinking. And play the video again once you're ready. So what did you come up with? A few suggestions could include asking if others in the class agree, asking if someone else could help try to reply, and so on. Here's a second example. Please pause the video again, read through the transcript, and reflect on strengths and weaknesses that you see in terms of supporting educational dialogue. You can play the video once you're ready. So what did you think about this last example? Was it a bit more promising than the previous one, perhaps? I would say that the teacher here uses the dialogue category of challenge to push for a better explanation, and this is followed by a student elaborating and building on his classmate's response. So like I said, it might be helpful to provide examples like that to your colleagues during maybe an initial workshop with them, while striving to create that buy-in to the approach of educational dialogue. And things like supporting them in coding their transcripts, or tracking the dialogue that's happening. That can all happen after there's first a very solid understanding of what educational dialogue means, and also what that theory and what the theories actually translate to in their practice. So that's it from me for this week's video. I think it's worth saying that the theory behind educational dialogue, it can be a lot to digest for anyone and for your colleagues. So do take it slow. And what's important is to consider how that translates to their practice. And so using a lot of practical elements in that initial workshop can really benefit the environment, I think. And you'll also benefit from, of course, conducting a needs assessment. So you can look at the initial understanding and familiarity with educational dialogue so that you'll know what resources are going to be the most helpful for you in those first meetings to create that buy-in. And what resources, of course, are the most appropriate. So if you're going to facilitate online, you could consider what resources can be very easily shared through Zoom. And I would probably also recommend using pieces of software that promote collaboration, like Padlet is one of them, and there are more too, which I can provide if that's an area of interest for yours. But we will be talking a little bit more about conducting a needs assessment in next week's module. So don't worry about doing that this week. There will be plenty of time for that later. For now, please just take a look at the readings, the resources, the activities, and the discussion forum contributions below. And I will see you in Module 3.